Hi everyone. My name is Christiana Morales. I'm the executive director here at Self-Determination Institute, and we are working on our complete guide to self-determination program. And we are recording these so you can see them on our website later. I have lots of resources for you. Everything's going to be in the chat, but we will also give you the slides for this because you'll get all the links to everything in these slides. And so I'm very excited to present our complete guide to SDP, and we are talking all about person-centered plans today. So, if you are following along with us, the steps to enrollment and self-determination program, hopefully you've already attended your orientation, that you attended our last meeting that talked about those pre-enrollment supports or independent facilitators, are the ones who provide those pre-enrollment supports. And today we're going to be talking about the person-centered plan, why it's so important, and this is actually probably one of my favorite parts about the enrollment process. I always like to start every training talking about the principles of self-determination because it's not just about the self-determination program, which are the services that you get, but it is about a philosophy. It's about civil rights and it's about people with disabilities having freedom, authority, responsibility, support, and confirmation over their lives. So it is bigger than just the program. It is about our loved ones having the same rights as everybody else. So, what are we going to learn today? What are we going through? Well, we're going to talk about the importance of the person-centered plan in self-determination program. We're going to talk about the difference between a person-centered plan and an assessment, steps to creating a plan. We're going to talk about a sample plan so you can see one, and we're going to give you tons of tools and resources so you can get started. So, this all starts from person-centered thinking. And person-centered thinking, people often mix up the person-centered plan with person-centered thinking. Person-centered thinking is a lot more holistic. It means that we are thinking about the participant first, that what we're going to focus on what matters to them, not just what others think that they need, but it helps them make their own choices about their lives and how they want to spend it. So, using that person-centered thinking, we're going to create a person-centered plan. So it's based on that thought, and it's a whole life plan, and it grows and it changes along with the person. So nobody is ever able to just create a plan and it's just done. We're always growing and changing, and our interests change and things that we want to do with our lives. But the key here is that we want the participant to be sharing their hopes and dreams and goals. And we're going to then be able to have family and friends figure out how we can support them to reach those goals. This is not a one size fits all. So it's not one of those things where we can say, oh, you just fill out this form or you just do this. No plans look the same, should look the same. It's very individualized to the participant. And person-centered planners who have had training in it have lots of tools that they can use to help figure out what are the wants and needs and likes of that participant so we can make sure that this is a person-centered plan. I want to talk a little bit about why this is so important. So a person-centered plan is not required for self-determination program enrollment, but I highly, highly recommend it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this becomes the foundation for your entire program. Many times people are going into the self-determination program because the traditional services weren't working for them. And so they may not have had enough services, or the ones that were offered to them were not working, or they just were not the right service. And so this plan is going to help you determine your budget and your spending plan in the future. And so this becomes the foundation for that whole thing. And doing this plan will help you maybe find that there might have been some services in the traditional system you didn't know existed, or that you didn't think were available to you that might be available to you. So that's why this plan can be very important. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a person-centered plan versus an assessment. And um, I have a son who is 23 years old. He's in his fourth year of self-determination program. And as he was entering, I'm a very impatient person. And so we were getting to the person-centered plan part, and I'm like, oh, let's just get this thing done. Let's get it over with quickly. And luckily, somebody said to me, no, this is really important. This is going to be the foundation for your whole program. Um, and it's not the same as an assessment. And so as they explained it to me, assessments are based on a medical model. If you have been in the school district at all, even getting into the traditional system, you know what the medical model is. They see a problem, they diagnose that problem, attempt to fix that problem, and then to cure them. Now, there is nothing wrong with this model. If I have an ear infection, I go to the doctor, they say, oh, you have an ear infection. I'm going to give you some antibiotics. We're going to get rid of that ear infection. Great. The problem is that a lot of our loved ones, these aren't things to be cured. There may be areas they need to work on, but this is not necessarily something you don't get to do behavior therapy and when you're 6 years old and you never have another behavior in your life. These are services that can really be necessary and needed for your entire life. This is why they call it long-term services. So now a person-centered plan is not focusing on those problems, what needs to be fixed. We're focusing on strengths. We're focusing on what your hopes and dreams are. Now, the good news about just what's going on in the world is about 6 months ago, with Disability Voices United, we presented at Stanford University, and there is a whole trend in a movement away from deficit-based assessments to move to strengths-based assessment. And that fits perfectly well with the person-centered thinking and person-centered model. So I'm hoping we're all moving in the right direction here. So, who creates this plan and how can they be paid? This is probably the most common question I get, so I'm going to give you some options for this. Best case scenario, you have an adult, they can create the plan themselves. That's amazing. If you can't get more person-centered than having the person create their own plan, they may need help writing it out or those kind of things, but that is the pinnacle. That's the best way to see it happen. Well, but we know that's not necessarily realistic for everybody. That isn't true. So then the next best, I would say, would be to hire a person-centered planner. And the people who often do these are called independent facilitators. So I want to start by saying person-centered planning is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. So there are planners out there who have done it for the foster care system. They have done it for employment practices, maybe supported living services. But it's really important when you're looking for a plan for self-determination program, that it's a planner who specifically does plans for self-determination because we need them to be experts in self-determination program in the traditional services as well as the self-determination program services. So because this plan is going to create some goals, it's going to really drive this program. So we need somebody who's an expert in that area. Now, you do not, as a participant or a family member, have to pay for this. This is 100% paid for by the regional center. So the regional center will pay up to $1,000 to the independent facilitator or person-centered planner who is going to do it for you. You as a participant don't have to worry about this. The planner will do all the invoicing and all that, so you don't have to worry about it. They also do not need to be a regional center vendor, which means you can pick anybody who meets specific requirements to do this plan for you. You might hear the term 024. 024 in the traditional system is often how parents are reimbursed if you have a social rec or something like that. That's also how the independent facilitators can be paid for the person-centered plan piece. They will need to provide proof that they've received some sort of training or certification in person-centered planning process. And what they will do is they'll turn in an invoice once that plan is complete. So they don't bill along the way. They will turn in once your plan is complete. Now, the last way you can create a person-centered plan, because I'm also very aware that we have a shortage of independent facilitators right now. I probably get calls every single day of people looking for independent facilitators, and I don't want anybody to not get into the program because they can't find an independent facilitator. So we do have another option. A family or a loved one, a trusted person, somebody from your community can help you with this plan. They can help you create it. But as we go along, I'm going to talk a little bit about our role as a family member. I'm a family member, I'm a mom, so I want to talk about what that might look like and uh, things that we kind of need to be cautious with if we're going to be a family member who does this. Now, a parent cannot be paid to create this person-centered plan for their minor child. So this $1,000 for the plan, if you have a minor child, you could not be paid for it. If your loved one is an adult and you do have proof of training that you've done sort of training, you could invoice and do that $1,000. Also, you do have to meet all those same rules if you want to be paid for it. Okay, let's quickly talk about kind of what the skills the planner needs. So when you are looking, you're interviewing, you want to hire somebody, this is a person that you have to feel very comfortable. The participant has to feel very comfortable. This is a position of trust. You're sharing your hopes and dreams with them. You want to feel very comfortable with them. You want your loved one to feel like they can open up and talk about, hey, I've always kind of wanted to do this. So they kind of this is why this is my favorite process. So, as an independent facilitator, I love doing person-centered plans because you really get to know people, and everybody has these amazing stories and these amazing lives, these amazing hopes and dreams. And so, you you want to have somebody who is trained, as we talked about, in the person-centered thinking. They have to understand those principles of self-determination that we talked about in the beginning. We want them to think about that they are supporting, not fixing this person. So trying to get away from that medical model and getting into the what do we do to help you get to your goal? We want to always assume competency. And we know this is a challenge, especially when we have loved ones who are non-speaking. But believe me, everybody has opinions about their lives. They have things they like and dislike, and they will communicate it. You don't have to use words to communicate that you dislike something. They will turn their head, they will put their hands up, they will shake their head no, they may vocalize. So everybody will be able to participate in this planning process. It's really important that the person-centered planner is a good listener, a respectful and an active listener. They shouldn't be the one driving everything and running it. We want to hear from the participant. They have to be able to embrace diversity. They have to be looking at the whole person. We talked about that this is not a one size fits all. You can't just have a form you fill out. It just doesn't work that way. They have to understand the person's culture. And as we already talked about, they have to be that expert in both traditional and SDP services. So if you are a parent and you are going to do this, or also if you're a parent and you're participating in this, I want to have a caution here. And I'm not saying this as being critical of anybody. I'm saying this as a parent myself. I am guilty of this myself. I have to keep myself in check. This is not a parent-centered plan. This is a person-centered plan. And I know that we can all often say, oh, I know my loved one better than anybody else. Well, hopefully our loved ones know themselves the best. And we're number two, right? We're really close there. I will talk about what a person-centered plan looks like for a minor. Well, of course, parents make more decisions for minors. So what I often think of a person-centered plan for a minor kind of looks more like a family-centered plan. How would we like to spend our time after school and our weekends and our holiday time together? How do we envision, but also still at every age, from the time people are barely walking, they will ask, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you like to do? What are the things that you want to do? So we want to make sure that they're always involved in this plan. So if you were going to be the one who is going to, and you're a parent and you are going to be the one creating this plan, I want you to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, can I truly be neutral? We want to make sure, am I going to be influencing this plan, or am I really going to be able to listen to my loved one? I don't want this to be what I think they should do. I want it to be what my loved one wants to do. So, I want to go for it because I'm one of those people. I have to see something. I can't talk about things in the abstract. So, what I thought we could do is we're going to look at a sample plan. I have lots of different samples, things that you can use to get information from. And then I thought, let's just kind of talk through one so you can see what one could possibly look like. Um, on our website, you will see there are steps to creating the plan. You have hopefully, Griffin, can you put in the chat the links to the slides? So you will have that as well. So you'll have all the links that you need. And so let's just kind of walk through. So our person that we're going to create a sample plan for Jane Doe. And Jane is in the 6th grade. So we're going to start with pre-planning. And so pre-planning, it just gives you a little time to think about it. You would be surprised by how many people, when I go in to do a person-centered plan, the participant says, do you know, I've never been asked what my hopes and dreams are. I haven't even thought about it. It's something I haven't even considered. And so that's okay. Maybe your first year, your first part of your plan is I got to start thinking about this stuff. So I want people to have the opportunity to think about it a little bit beforehand so they don't walk in and feel like under pressure, like they have to come up with these answers. So, but there are other things that you want to make decisions about of how this plan is going to take place. Because again, remember, there's no one right way to do this. So you want to decide who you want at the meeting. There's no requirement, and absolutely, we want the participant to be as comfortable as they can be. So they can decide if they want someone there. I got teenagers who don't want mom there. I know that's a tough one for moms, right? Like, oh, knife in the heart. But yeah, uh, we're going to decide when and where to have the meeting. We want it at a time when the participant's most comfortable. So like my son is not a morning person, so we're not doing a person-centered plan in the morning. We would do one in the afternoon, maybe even evening, maybe weekends. Maybe school days are just too busy for him. And that on a weekend, after, if he gets to sleep in, then he's going to be much more happy to talk. We want to decide if there are going to be any additional special supports or tools that they're going to need to communicate and have them start thinking about those things that might be important to them. So your planner might give you questions to think about in advance. So in our sample, Jane and her mom thought about who's in their circle of support. They don't have a large circle of support. And I'll say this is not uncommon in our community, that that a lot of people don't have large extended families where they live, but also if you do, sometimes we get isolated from them. Sometimes our extended families and our friends don't understand what our lives are like, and how they've changed. And so we may not have large circles of supports, and that's okay. You do not have to have a large one. You might have a goal and say, you know what? I'd like to expand my circle of support. So that could be one of the goals. But think about who is that circle, who you might want to have at your person-centered meeting. You're going to pick the time when you want to have it scheduled. And so just pick some dates that are convenient for everybody. And also, like we said, talk about the time. So in our sample, they picked some dates that would work both for her and her mother and her sister. And then she said she prefers meeting in the afternoon. Okay, so now what is this meeting going to look like? There is no any certain way this meeting should happen or what it should look like. Some people like what they call a party with a purpose, where they get together and a group of people talk about the goals and how they can support the goals of the loved one. Um, I don't have a lot of clients who do this because what I often see is that when you get too many people in the room, sometimes that person's voice gets lost. And so we want to make sure our person is always at the forefront. We are always person-centered. So it's really, if they're extroverted and they like a big group and they like people talking about them, the party with a purpose might be a great choice. If they're not, there's so many other options. You could have an in-person meeting with a small group. You could have an online meeting. You could do individual interviews with, so maybe they're more comfortable just talking to you directly and they want you to talk to each of the people in their support individually. I've had people that prefer sending them back and forth through emails because they prefer writing or texting, or they don't speak and it's easier for them to type than it is. I actually have had a few clients that like have pictures or Pinterest boards. I would send them a question like, and we would just work our way through the questions, and they would send me all kinds of pictures on a Pinterest board, which came up with just the most beautiful person-centered plan. So this is based on how the participant communicates and feels most comfortable. In our sample case, Jane and her mother decided they wanted to do the interviews for her meeting. They wanted it over Zoom. She wanted her sister to be there as well. And she said, it's okay to have a separate interview with Grandma, but I don't want her to be in this meeting. Because she said, Grandma likes to take over. She has very set ways how she wants to do things, but I think she has some good input for us. So I said, great. So this is how Jane's plan is starting to come together. So how the plan is actually created is you have that meeting, and during that meeting or those multiple meetings, the planner is going to be taking notes of what's going on. And they have lots of tools. We talked about the planners get trained in tools. There's lots of tools. I'm going to share on the next slide some of those tools that exist to try to draw out and think about things that maybe you hadn't thought about, because nobody can just sit down and write, here are my perfect goals of what I want. Sometimes you need exercises to help you come up with what are these things you want to do. And then what'll happen is your planner will come up with a draft plan, and they're going to share it with the participant, their circle. And not until the participant and their circle says they're happy with it and it's finalized is it done. Remember, this is the participant's plan. They have to be happy with it. I will also say it is so easy to fall back into that assessment model. It's so easy. So this is a great time as you are going through and you are looking at that draft plan, double check. Is this person centered? Is this reading like a list of things they can't do, or is this reading like the list of things they want to do and things we can help them and support them and things they want to learn to get there? So this is a great time to let's just do a double check. At this point, Jane and her mother reviewed the plan and they made some changes. So we want to make sure, because sometimes how the planner hears it or remembers it, maybe it just didn't get translated well. So we want to make sure it actually does represent the person. So what this plan, the final plan, is going to look like, again, there is no one set way. It could look like a written plan. It could look like a path that's drawn out with pictures. It could be a PowerPoint presentation. I've seen picture boards. There is no one set way that the plan should look like. In our sample, Jane and her mother selected a written plan because that made sense to them. Okay, here are those tools we talked about. So we talked about the person-centered planners have to have some sort of training at the end of the slides. If you're ever interested in doing some training in it, I have a great training course that I loved. Here are things that you should probably see included in your plan. You should expect to see. You want to see some sort of circle of support thought through. We often don't think about who are our circle. And sometimes when you sit down and start, you realize, oh, I actually have more supporters than I realized I did. Um, we want to see some sort of balance between what's important to and what's important for. Our next slide is going to talk all about that, so I'm not going to go into detail now. We want to talk about where you're at today. What's your current situation? And then where do you want to go? Your short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. Um, we want specific goals because when we start using this, it's going to influence your individual program plan, your IPP. And so they want to see something for the IPP, like what is it I want to do? What are these goals that I want to work on? Um, Often having a summary of what your current services are in the traditional system helps with a schedule. That also helps identify if there are needs that you have time that is just not being supported. Those schedules really help. And if you have a change in circumstance or need or resource right now that you need to maybe look at having another service added. Um, and that's where this person-centered plan is going to be very helpful. The other things that you could maybe include are things like what do people like and admire about the participant? What are their skills and talents? How they communicate? How to best support them? Things to figure out. Qualities of people to support them. Things you want to avoid. Maybe there's like maybe um, some people like bubbly people to support them, and they like people who are like me, hyper and bubbly. And some people, I'm just way too much for them. They want somebody who's very calm and soothing. And so those are things I think that would are nice to put in there. I personally love Best Day, Worst Day. It's such a fun exercise. We always have lots of laughs about it, but it also tells you a lot about what are the things this person likes and what are the things they don't like. So that's one of my ones that I really enjoy doing. So remember, this plan should be covering all areas of their lives, where they live, their employment goals. Now, think about this. Even minors have employment goals. Think how many times have we asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Think about, so and we will, if they say, I want to grow up to be a singer, I want to grow up to be a dancer, what do? We take our kids to singing classes and dancing classes and those things. So we can start thinking about that stuff early. Um, what schools, their community, emergency planning, future planning. So this plan is not just going to cover regional center services. So be aware, you may come up with goals and things that you want to do that regional center isn't going to pay for, but it's still part of your person-centered plan. Good example of that is maybe you have a goal that you want to spend more time with your grandparents, and that involves you having to travel to see them. Well, Regional Center isn't going to pay for your travel, but think about some of the things that you could do, that you could learn in order to prep to be able to and be ready to do that. So those are the things that they can help you with. So just kind of be aware that everything in your plan will not necessarily be paid for by the regional center, but it also helps you in that whole picture know, oh, okay, we have this goal, school district's paying for this part of it, in-home support is paying for this part of it, Department of Rehabilitation is paying for this, regional centers paying for this. So it also helps the supporters, the parents, support figure out who's responsible, who's supposed to be paying for what. So let's talk about this balancing act between important to and important for. So this is where it gets, I always get a little nervous when we talk about important for that we fall back into that medical model. We do not want a list of things they cannot do. So, but you have to have a balanced person-centered plan. Nobody gets to do everything they want in life and not think about health and safety at all. We have to have this balance. So a good person-centered planner is going to balance out the things that make this person content, satisfied, happy, excited, goals they want to meet, balanced with there's some things that they have to have that need to keep them safe and healthy. And I'll give you kind of an example of something that, and important for isn't necessarily somebody else giving this list of things. I personally have things that are important to me and important for me. Um, a good one is food is not important to me. I'm not a super, it's just not high on my list. But it's important for me to eat healthy food. And I know that. And I know I should be eating healthier. So one of my goals could be, I think I would feel better if I ate healthier. And so it's important for me to learn a little bit more about nutrition. Maybe get out and exercise a little bit. Maybe, do some things. So just be cautious that we don't have important for become a list of things our loved one can't do. So, things that should not be in the PCP. Words matter. I can't emphasize enough how this is not a list of things the person shouldn't do. So watch out for those clinical terms. I when so I spent years doing IEPs and school district assessments. And in our office, we would always jokingly, if somebody would like cuss in the middle of a meeting, we would write goals for them. So everybody knows what those SMART goals are, right? And it would be, okay, Christy is going to use appropriate language when she gets upset in 4 out of 5 trials with 90% accuracy. So we would do these goals. These are not the kind of goals we're looking for in the person-centered plan. Our goal would be, um, Christy would like to make some friends. So what are some things we could do to help her make friends? Well, maybe some social skills class, maybe having somebody who comes with her, maybe giving her some opportunities to get out into the community to make them. How about figuring out the things that she likes doing so she can be around people who enjoy doing the same things? That's what our person-centered goals are going to look like. It's not saying what she can't do, it's saying she wants to do this, how do we support her to get there? Um, so let's look at a sample of Jane's plan. Now, this is kind of a boring sample, I know, because what I would want you to do, if you use this um, template, that you make it your own. That this is just a starting place so you know where to start. Sorry for the scrolling. I hope I'm not making everybody sick. But you have a copy of this. It's available for you. This is a Word document. I have multiple ones that you can look and start from. So here's a person-centered plan. Here's Jane, who we are creating this plan for. This is not a complete plan. This is a work in progress, things for you to think about. Our plan has a table of contents, which is built into this one. We're going to start by talking about who the facilitator was, how did the meeting happen, um, and what part did Jane play in this, in creating this plan? And so as you saw with all the pre-planning, she was part of the process as we decided, her and her mother decided what this plan was going to look like. And she's been an active participant all along the way. Now, is everybody always an active participant? No, there's sometimes people are not that active. They'll come in, they'll answer questions, but it's our role as a person-centered planner to draw them out and have them included as absolute much as possible. Um, there's a little blurb talking about Jane. We said she's a 6th grader. She's in elementary school. She has a dog that she loves. She loves to play video games, and she plays music. She's really into K-pop. I clearly have thought about this fictitious person a lot as we wrote this plan up. If this is a follow-up year, it's great to have last year's progress here. Talk about the goals they had and how they worked on them and what they meant. If this is a first year, you can delete that section. So remember, we have all these sections in here. You may use them, you may not. It really depends on that person. Here's Jane's circle of support. She's got her mom and her sister, and there's her grandmother. She has a one-to-one aide that she works with. She has some friends at church, and she has online groups that she likes to play with. We talked about the things that the people in her life love and admire about her. We talked about her interests. Her favorite band is BTS. She loves to dance. She likes to play Minecraft. We talked about those important to her. She told us what she likes. Fine, this is the place as a person-centered planner. Tell me more. Tell me more about what you like. What's your favorite video game? Do you have, they say, I want to go to movies. What are your favorite kind of movies? Tell me about those. She said she likes to go get smoothies. So this is where we really get, to me, this is the fun part. This is where we get to meet the people and know them. Um, and I'll tell you, like I said, in a lot of cases, this is the first time somebody's asked them these questions. Um, they should be asked this. Everybody should be asked this. Here's this important for. These are the things that we say, it's important for Jane to take her medication on time. This is a health and safety issue. So, yes, moms, I hear you. We have things that we are worried about. We want to make sure get in this plan because we are worried about their health and safety. Absolutely. We want to get those health and safety things into these plans, but we want to do it in a person-centered way. So let we can do both. A good person-centered planner can do both. Here's where you could talk about how Jane communicates, qualities that Jane likes in a person who is going to help her. She said she doesn't like to be criticized and she doesn't like people who hover over her. Here's that best day and worst day. So we have lots of tools in here that you can use, and you can use some of them, take some out. You can have original ones that you have. You maybe have ones, I can see that we have independent facilitators in this group, and you guys may have some innovative ones that you use. What's working for Jane currently and what's not working. There's some things like she said that she wants to have more friends and she wants to help, but she needs a little help learning to engage with the new people. She said she kind of would like a part-time job, and she said, I'd love to work at that smoothie place. She wants more opportunities to see classmates outside of school. So those are things that are kind of not working for her right now. This is where our goals come from. Things we might need to figure out. Here's that weekly schedule we talked about. For minors, I like to do 2 schedules. One while they're in school and one while they're out of school, because their schedules look very different. So the regional center can adapt services during that time, like camp, like additional supports when they are out of school. Additional things for them to do. Maybe some more social rec when they're out of school so they can keep busy and be out in that community. As you can see, Jane doesn't have a lot of things. I like to kind of keep a list. Again, this really helps the regional center see what services are there. So we know that there's 168 hours in a week, and so we can look at that. Things to think about when you're creating this week. Things that regional center are going to see, and it's also kind of a reality check. Nobody can be scheduled every day, 10 hours a day. Have time. You got to have downtime. You got to have time when they can relax and rest and all of those things. So it's nice. Think about those things of how do they have time to just chill out? I know that's super important, especially school's taxing. It's extremely difficult for people who are, if they're autistic and they're masking, they're exhausted by the time they come home. They may just need some time to relax. So put that in those weekly schedules, because I'll tell you, regional center is going to feel so much more comfortable when they see you are being reasonable about this. You're saying, okay, this is what we would like our week to look like. Again, we said for minors, this is the family thing of what do we want the weeks to look like. Here's those short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals that Jane has. She also has, we're going to go into here, and these are the life areas. So if you're haven't had an IPP since January of 2025, there is a new IPP form, and it includes person-centered planning within it. Now, I will say, we personally have the most lovely service coordinator. We're very fortunate. But the time that they have to do that IPP with us, there is no way they can do a person-centered plan as in-depth as one of these plans is. So I would not recommend that you just let that IPP replace the person-centered plan. The regional center is paying for it. They have the money. Do it. Do an in-depth plan. These take time. So service coordinators don't have the kind of time to do it. But a lot of times, what they'll do is if you're going to self-determination or you're rolling over to year, they'll use the person-centered plan to help fill out that IPP. Now, they broke it up into life areas. And so we have them to kind of match the IPP life areas here in this. And so you want your goals to match those life areas, but then we want to make sure that the goals in here end up in that IPP because we can't put anything on a spending plan that there is not an IPP goal for. So that's why it's important. We're kind of lining all these things up. We need to have so in our case, we had a little bit of change in circumstance coming up that Jane is finishing elementary school. She's about to go into junior high school. She wants to think about dating. So maybe we need to look at, are there any classes on dating at the regional center? Are there any things for social rec that's going to help her in the areas because she said she wanted to be making more friends? So those are change in circumstances that we may look at some additional services to be added to that budget. Okay, so I am going to close that. So that is kind of a sample PCP. Again, that's a written one. It could be pictures, it could be drawings, it could be anything. It does not need to look like that. That's a very bare bones. I encourage you to add photos, make it their favorite color, make them fun. If they have a dog they love, put a picture of their dog in there. Make this their plan. Make it something that they love, that they enjoy. So I have 4 different samples that you can look at. Look at them. See which one fits with you the best. The top one is the SDI template. That's the one I just showed you. The second one is the one we just talked about, that IPP. They have a sample person-centered plan part that goes with that. They have sample plans, they have trainings, so they have all kinds of things, information on that. So if you want to go look at that, there's some good information. There is a book called It's My Choice, and it was created by the Minnesota Governor's Manual. You can download it for free here. If you email them, they'll send you a hard copy, and it's a manual where it's kind of like you can, a workbook where you can fill things in. I think that's another great tool. And then the last one here is from the Independent Facilitator Training Academy. They created a really great workbook. It's called Building My Future SDP. And it is a similar workbook. There is a free one you can download here online, and you can also purchase their book if you want one hard copy. So lots of resources and samples for you here. If you are looking for that independent facilitator to do your person-centered plan, I have a couple places for you to look. We have a new provider network that we will put in the chat right now, but it's also going to be in the links in these slides that you can go and look for independent facilitators. Also, the SDP network has lists of independent facilitators. Hold on one second. Excuse me. Other places to go. Every single regional center has a local volunteer advisory committee. Go to your advisory committee and see who else is there. Tell them you're looking for an independent facilitator. Some regional centers, that local volunteer advisory committee has paid to have support groups. That's a great way. Some of them have paid to have coaches, and they can help you find an independent facilitator. Come to our meetings. We have monthly meetings, and we always invite independent facilitators. Put your information in the chat if you're looking for one, or if you are an independent facilitator and you have openings. So our big role and job is to connect as many people as we can. And the last one is for resources. If you are interested in doing that person-centered thinking training, if you plan on doing this for a living, I loved the Helen Sanderson and Associates training. They are kind of like the gold standard for person-centered thinking. I want to say they're somewhere around $250. If this is something you're interested in, there is the link to their training as well. I think it is an amazing training. It is great. So, if I know this was a whirlwind, I know this was fast. All of this information is on our website, Complete Guide to SDP.org. A recording of this will also be there. So if you ever are like, what did she say about this? Or where was that resource? Where was that link? All of this information is on our website. Um, and also, always, please come to our meetings, ask questions. We are really here just to support everybody that wants to be in the self-determination program to have the tools to get into the program. And our next meeting next month, we are the first Tuesday of every month at lunchtime at noon. We're going to be talking about the budget. Okay, I'll say budget is probably my least favorite part of the step. It's dollars, it's money, it's a necessary step, and we are going to go into depth so everybody will understand that we'll get a sample budget so you can see what one looks like, and we will talk about every part of the budget that you could possibly want.